Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Derek Piper and Mike LaTulip back to break down what was a fantastic performance for Illini basketball on Thanksgiving Day, 90-77 over the 19th ranked Arkansas Razorbacks for the Illini. The hopes going in, Mike, at least mine if I were making them, is that the turkey's tender, there's enough whipped cream for the pumpkin pie, and that the basketball is good. Mm-hmm. I think all those boxes were checked. In particular, the last one, the basketball was great for the Illini. Rolled out to a commanding early lead, led by as few as 9 points in the second half. It was really a double-digit performance there where they were up on Arkansas in a commanding way for most of the game. And let's break it all down. What impressed you the most on a day where Illinois bombs 15 threes? You got good guard play. You hold down the other guards on the other side, and it was just a really complete performance. So what'd you take away?
Yeah, it's, again, just to touch on what you said, it's a really good win. I thought you outperformed Arkansas in virtually every category. I thought, the physicality, the toughness, the discipline offensively, I thought, it was a heavy pick and roll game. So the way that Illinois came into that game and their game plan on that end, we'll talk about that here in a second, I'm sure. But the carryover defensively from that Little Rock game, I thought the Little Rock game was as active, as physical, as locked in as Illinois has been defensively all year. And they took that to another level against a better team this time around. So, and then the last part, I just thought they flat out outcoached them too. I mean, I thought they had the better players on the floor, but they also outcoached them, which was great to see. So it's a really impressive win on a big stage. And I think for maybe some of the Bears fans, it was a nice palate cleansing.
Yeah. I wish that played out differently. I was excited for Caleb, maybe in addition to his arrival moment, beating the Lions on national TV on Thanksgiving Day. He deserved better. He's deserved better up to this point. We don't have to do all that. I'm numb to a lot of it. So I don't know if you're a Bears fan.
I didn't want to derail the show. Matty Rufus is probably still sitting at bedside with that timeout with him.
Oh my gosh, he's still sitting with it. As of recording this morning on a Friday, he still has a job, so that's one thing that's wrong. We'll go back to basketball though. 11-0 out of the gate, Mike. Throwing those punches early, knocking down threes. Ivisic hits 2 of those of his 6 right there in the early going. What did you see for Illinois that allowed them to immediately come out hot and do what they want to do offensively?
Yeah, virtually every play, that 11-0 lead that they took, virtually every play on both ends featured a pick and roll. And so for Illinois, offensively, obviously picking it apart because they wanted to put 2 on the ball. And you had kind of the easy throwbacks to Tomislav Ivisic. And I think people watch it and it looks very routine. But when you look off the ball and see what everybody else is doing, it's what makes those shots so uncontested. So, the first 3 that Ben had, Thero makes a really poor play, goes under, Ben hits it. But the second 3 that Tomislav hit, you got Ben on the weak side. So when that ball gets thrown back, it's Tomislav and Ben on the same side. And Ben recognizes as soon as that ball is in the air, because they put 2 on the ball, it's basically 1 man for 2 guys on the weak side. And Ben and Tomislav were probably 7 feet apart, which is not what you want on throwbacks because you're giving that guy an opportunity to stunt over, to help out. And Ben, as soon as that ball goes in the air, he realizes that he's got to eliminate his man from the equation, and he just dives to the rim. He dives to the rim as soon as that ball is in the air, and then Tomislav gets a clean one, hits a 3, and then to make it 8-0, you got Kylan Boswell up top, and what Tomislav has realized and what Tomislav does really well is seal his man, that drop, the drop defender or the ball screen defender. That's the big man that's popping out to guard Kylan. And then what Kylan does really well is snake ball screens. So that marriage in the middle third of the floor, you got Kylan coming off, and as soon as he snakes, it's right into a Tomislav seal. And it just creates this pathway for Kylan to get downhill for a layup. And, really same thing on Tomislav's 3 to make it 11-0. It's beyond, it's more than just the ball screen action offensively. it's, hey, it's free flowing, yes, but it's very deliberate. Like we know we were understanding spacing more. And I thought that really helped them jump out to the lead. And then defensively, I thought Arkansas was completely flummoxed by Illinois doing basically what you would call drop switching. So they drop switched Tomislav. And so when Boogie Flang came off, it looks like drop because he's not committing up to the ball at the 3-point line, but you're just in a switch. And you could see Tomislav pointing to Kylan to go get Big Z. And you can do that when you have a guy like Big Z that's not like necessarily low post threat. He's more likely going to pick and pop. But you also have to trust your guard to be able to handle his own rebounding and boxing out and putting a body on that guy if he does decide to roll. So I thought there was so much indecision from Arkansas. We'll show it in the film. So much indecision from Arkansas coming off those ball screens. And it was all because of the game plan going in, which was like, hey, we're going to drop switch with Tomislav and see if we can force tough twos. And that's what they did.
Mike, that drop switch was something that Alabama used against Illinois. I know that I was wondering with Cliff out there how that pick and pop game would really open up for Tommy. And he got his opportunities. He took a couple. But early in the game, that they weren't wide open as they were against Arkansas because Bama was, as it went to the paint, they switched it and they left that guard out there. I was a little surprised, and you mentioned the coaching matchup, and we can talk more about what you saw that really led to an advantage for Illinois' side of things. But seeing late in the game and Big Z still in drop and still getting threes out there for Tommy at a night when, again, he rattles off 6 of them. Or was it 6? Yeah, 6 for 9. I don't know why I questioned myself. I got the stats up in front of me. But was that a mistake, in your opinion, from Arkansas to not change their coverage? I would think that Z, with his mobility, could get out there a little bit more and maybe try to, I'm not saying blow up ball screens, but hedge a little bit more or be ready for that. That was something that stood out to me late in the game when a big man like Tommy has it rolling and he's still splashing them from beyond the arc.
Well, I think I understood the game plan coming in for Arkansas. I mean, you're looking and you're saying, okay, Kylan Boswell is getting downhill now, really making it a point to get downhill. We know how good Kasparas is, and that's their first order of business. That's why they're putting 2 on the ball, is to get the ball out of those 2 guys' hands. What they're saying is, hey, if you want to give the 28% 3-point shooter, and this is the mistake, I think. They're looking at Tomislav as a 28% 3-point shooter based off numbers this year. He shot 42% last year, pro. So they treated him like a non-shooter. And we know, being close to the program, like he shot the cover off it in the offseason. He, on decent volume, shot 42% last year. And that was what their game plan was. What surprised me was how long they stuck with it. Because even by the time, the second half hit where Tomislav hit his last 3, they actually started full rotating. But you can combat that if you're Illinois with your spacing. So just like I said, when Ben was about 7 feet away from Tomislav and dove to the rim, it's either that is your option or you have to stay so spaced to the corner that guy that has to full rotate has to run a mile to get there. So the last 3 that Tomislav hit was like a somewhat contested shot from DJ Wagner, but DJ Wagner had to run probably 20 feet because Jake Davis was like all the way in the corner. And that's great spacing. And that's what makes a team like Illinois so hard to guard. Because then you have these adjustments and it's like, well, do we just play straight drop with Kasparas? We can't do that. Like he's a drop murderer. Or do we put 2 on the ball? We put 2 on the ball. And now Tomislav is, picking and popping. But if we want to full rotate, Illinois spacing so good that these are long rotations. So you can see how they really put Arkansas into a bind yesterday, no matter what type of defense they threw at them. So I thought it was really impressive.
Mike, I want to get into a couple of the other individual performances. You already mentioned Kylan Boswell. That was a guy that early against Ole Miss, early against Bama, yes, he picked it up in the second half offensively, and defensively had a really good outing against Mark Sears. But that's somebody you want to look the part in these games, like, because he's been in a lot of them. And that was evident from the very early going at both ends of the floor, was assertive offensively, was getting downhill like you were talking about, puts up, 18 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. Boogie Flan goes 2 for 12 at the other side. How good was Kylan and how important was that? And just to add in a little cherry on top, the downhill emphasis for him. He just looks more aggressive, but also comfortable and in control.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to be dramatic about like, hey, it changed the season, because it didn't, but like it's a big factor that Kylan Boswell has realized that he's whatever he is, 210 pounds, 215 pounds. And it's like, man, I can get downhill whenever the hell I want and at will. And he's starting to do that. I mean, you look at this year, 7 free throws last night, 6 free throws against Maryland Eastern Shore, 5 free throws against Alabama. He didn't have a single game last year for Arizona, not a single one where he shot over 4 free throws. Not one. And it's exactly what I saw watching the film this offseason was, yes, you had Ballo really clogging the paint. Like there weren't many opportunities to get to that like last layer of the defense. But you also had, it was almost ingrained in Kylan at that point where it's like, hey, when I start getting downhill, once I start getting into that 12 to 15 foot range, I just pick up the ball and I either shoot a floater or I shoot a pull up. And now it's like, man, he's more efficient by getting downhill, getting to the free throw line, getting and finishing. Like he can finish down there too. I mean, that's the thing that really was the Alabama game where I was like, hold on. Okay, he starts doing this, because I was talking to some people after the first couple games. I'm like, he knows he can get downhill, right? Like he knows he's fast. He knows he's strong. And that's a really good combination to be a confrontational driver. And he's starting to do that. So now, again, like that's what puts Arkansas in such a bind. That's what puts these teams in such a bind, because if you want to play ball screen defense, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't cut these guys off, or if you do, now it's a throwback. I mean, I've been really impressed with Kylan. And then just yesterday, him being able to, he gets a big offensive rebound at the end of the game off the Kasparas air ball for the layup. He strips DJ Wagner, dives on the ball. He has a bunch of tough finishes where he's flexing, he's pumped up. Like he's becoming like an emotional leader for this team, which is awesome because they're a young team and he needs to do that. And so him being able to be that emotional leader, but also do it through like action, toughness plays. That's exactly what you want, because that's a Brad Underwood guy. Is what Kylan Boswell is doing right now. Is what a Brad Underwood guy is.
We're only a month, and it's not even done yet, but a month into this young season. Going in, there's been high comps for Kylan at the defensive end, and Brad said he could be as good as an on-ball defender as we've ever had. They've mentioned a Trent Frazier-like impact as far as that goes. I mean, the resume early, you look at Sears, you look at Fland. What do you think about that, and what is he doing so well at that end?
Yeah, it really is very reminiscent of Trent Frazier. Just the inability to get screened, I think the maturity to continue to guard despite the shooting woes that he was going through in the beginning of the year. That's half the battle. Like just showing up on that end every possession is half the battle. And my guy Rob Douster, the Field 68, had a tweet yesterday that said Chucky Hepburn is the best on-ball defender in college basketball. I don't know, man. Like and Chucky's incredible, but that's how good Kylan's been. Like you're talking about a preseason All-American and Mark Sears scoring 0 points, and Boogie Flan not being able to get downhill, having to settle for those floaters, having to settle for those tough contested twos, turning the ball over a few times. Like he's really made an impact, big time impact on that end. And Illinois right now, I think per KenPom, I think they're 21st defensively after this morning, after all the games finished last night. I mean, Kylan's a big reason for that. I mean, all these guys, I think they're a better defensive team than last year, but it starts at the head of the snake right there. And he's pushing teams out, where they want to start their offense is it's 5 feet behind where they want to start it. And he's been great. And again, it's a weapon to have because, you're going to face more good guards. When you go and face Purdue, right? When you go and face, like, even when you go play Maryland and you got like a quick guy like Jacoby Gillespie that you feel like maybe you can out physical with a guy like Kylan. Like he's physical, but he's also, he's quick. I mean, that dude's a freak. Like that, he's one of the more athletic players I've seen on a floor in a long time. And for Kylan at times to get switched on to him, block his shot at the rim, keep up with him and then block his shot and then like flex towards the bench. I'm like, man, dude, has potential to be, definitely an all defensive Big Ten guy, but like just the overall impact he have it's gonna lead to winning a lot of games.
You guys have heard me talk up Home Field Apparel for a while now, but now is the time to get to homefieldapparel.com because they have their most ambitious sale to date, their Black Friday sale. 30% off site-wide on everything at Home Field Apparel, which is the premium collegiate apparel brand, and they're based right out of Indianapolis. Go to homefieldapparel.com, look up their Illinois gear, guys. They got script Illini gear, flying Illini gear. Their bomber jacket is phenomenal. They just have everything vintage. Everything looks great. All these great logos from Illinois' past, even some hockey gear on there as well. And now is the time to go there because their Black Friday sale is great. 30% off a whole site at homefieldapparel.com. Just use code BFCM24. That's BFCM24 for 30% off site-wide at homefieldapparel.com. If you have an Illini fan in your life that you need a gift for, go to homefieldapparel.com and check out some of the great Illini gear. My personal favorite is the Flying Illini logo. They have a hoodie, they have a t-shirt, and the great things about these shirts, they're great fitting, and they are so comfortable, guys. So go check it out, homefieldapparel.com, 30% off their Black Friday sale. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use coupon code BFCM24, and you get 30% off now through December 3rd at homefieldapparel.com.
No doubt about it. Could have led with him. He was more in the closer role. Not that we're closing quite yet, but Kasparas, Jakucionis, 23 points, 7 for 13 from the field. At one point in the second half, down the stretch, really 14 straight for the Illini. He added 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 turnovers. You'll live with those, absolutely. How good was he? You mentioned him being a drop killer, and yeah, I mean the pull-ups, the step back three. I mean, he was in his bag down the stretch. Mike, what'd you think of old KJ?
Yeah, I mean, he just continues to amaze me. I think his size and his skill level and how even keel he plays, but yet he still plays with emotion. He shows emotion towards his teammates. He's always picking guys up. That's the stuff I look at first, because you want to be, yes, he's a great facilitator and all that, so he's fun to play with, but you want to be fun to play with, beyond those things, beyond your skill set. And I think like those guys really enjoy playing with him. He's just about his business. He carries himself the right way. And as that game went on, you started to see he gets guys involved early, and then when it gets into that like really important 12-minute to 4-minute, 8-minute stretch, it's one of the more important stretches in college basketball, and to have a guy that can take over in those moments, and then he kind of hits the dagger when it's a little bit under 3 minutes, just super impressive. And I thought coming into the season, you watch some of the FIBA stuff and you're like, hey, this could translate. We'll see what happens with this. He's impressed me so much defensively. That was a question mark I had, like getting over ball screens. I thought he struggled with that at times in FIBA. And then just guarding the ball. He's just hounded the ball. And having that next to a guy like Kylan Boswell is huge. And then him just being assertive. Again, like we talked about, the Oakland game shifted things for him. Like the light bulb went off where he's like, hold on, I need to go back to being FIBA KJ. I mean, what are we doing? And it's opened up things for everybody else. So yeah, I mean, it is, you can see why he's getting the top 10 talk, getting the lottery talk, getting just the first round talk. That's what they look like. It's guys with that type of size and that type of ability. And we can go down the line with all these different pieces that Illinois has. And, he's right up there at the top with one of the most important ones.
Mike, Jeremy said that after this game, Brad mentions that, as you can imagine, that this was really his vision for the offense going into the offseason. When you look at, anytime a coach is dreaming, they want to see 15 threes on 31 attempts, that type of efficiency. But to see them emphasize the three ball, also go to the free throw line, 22 free throw attempts. They were efficient at the rim. They were 9 for 12 at the basket there. So what did you see as far as that goes? I think the spacing, obviously putting pressure, you already talked about some of that, the decisions that Arkansas was forced to have to make, cover this or cover that. that really played itself out against a defense that was top 10 in the country on KenPom going into this game, and they sliced and diced them, 1.3 points per possession.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we talked about. It's one thing if you make 15 threes and it's a team sitting in a zone and you get hot, you find the creases on the wing, you find the creases up top, and you start knocking down shots. This was like a true variety for 15 threes. It's like you go under on Ben Hummerkaus, 3. Okay, you want to overhelp in the middle of the floor, spray it to Ben Hummerkaus on the wing, 3. You want to mess up your ball screen coverage, pick and pop to Tomislav, 3. You want it off the bounce with KJ, late game, kind of like, he's like Luka getting to that left, getting that left hand and to that step back going left. 3. Floor spacer like Jake Davis, great. You go in rotation, 1 more, corner, 3. Will Riley, you don't want to come out and contest. Adu, 3. Tomislav on the fast break. Will Riley's pushing it on the fast break. Tomislav, Merez was in at the time, I think. Tomislav runs the wing and gets a 3 from the wing. So I think you're just sitting there, you're like, okay, well, if you want to say, hey, we want to eliminate their 3-point looks, they're getting it in so many different ways. Like, they're going to find ways to get those looks. And then we know what they're capable of as shooters. And tonight, or I guess last night, felt like, one of the first games where I didn't think they shot above their abilities in that game. I thought they shot to their abilities. And that's what's scary about it, because that was, a little under 50% from 3. And you start to be more consistent with that, and guys start to become more consistent with where they're getting these looks, you're going to see those percentages continue to climb from what they're at right now. I think they're 35% for the year. Like, you start creeping up into that high 30s range, start sniffing 40. Now teams really have to try to change how they guard you.
Score 90, you hit 15 threes. Will Riley only went 2 for 9 from the field, 1 for 5. We know what he's capable of. That tells you right there that the ceiling's really high, and that when somebody, if Ben doesn't make his 3 threes, that Will obviously can pick up that slack. And one other thing I want to get your thoughts on offensively, Mike, is the stats say 69 possessions, only 11 turnovers against an aggressive, athletic defense, one that has turned people over. That seemed like a real sign of progress. And one thing I wrote about going into the game, that don't have sloppy offense benefit an Arkansas offense that struggled in the half court. I know you talked about that when we did the last podcast. If you don't give them runouts with your turnovers, they could have a tough time scoring with you. And that obviously played itself out.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like the whole game, the only form of offense that was real for Arkansas was Billy Richmond in the first half getting out on the fast break, and then Thero in the second half getting out on the fast break. That was it, because then they could get matchups that they liked and they could get downhill. And they didn't have to deal with any pick and roll. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point with the 11 turnovers. That was a team that turns you over because they put 2 on the ball. That hurts teams. They trap sometimes, 3/4 court, kind of token trap press. And this Illinois team has just killed press this year. I mean, if you press them, they have so much size and passing ability to see right over you, to spread the floor. They've really hurt teams that have tried to full court pressure them. But one thing I want to mention, you have 11 turnovers, and it was 11 turnovers from 3 guys. It was your 3 highest usage guys. No one else had a turnover. I mean, you can add up however many minutes that was for other guys. But Ben Hummerkaus, 29 minutes, no turnovers. Will Riley, 29 minutes, no turnovers. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn comes in, and we know he can get, over his skis a little bit sometimes. No turnovers. Jake Davis, I know he only played 6 minutes, but no turnovers. Space the floor. He's kind of stepped in for Kerry Booth, because I just think he's more dependable right now. And so for what that Ole Miss game looked like with 22 turnovers, and you're just kind of hey, what do they want to do offensively? No one kind of knew where to go. Super impressive, man, once again. And I think it all comes down to, hey, you want the ball in Kylan, KJ, and Tomislav's hands the most. And I say that, I didn't even mention their leading scorer, or I don't know if he still is after last night, but with Will, I don't throw him in that category because I don't think he needs to be. Will can still have 15, 20 points on very low volume ball handling. But you can still see that when they need somebody to alleviate and break the press, and it's not KJ and it's not Kylan, Will can do that. So things are starting to come into form, and usually that the turnover number is a great indicator of that, where it's like, hey, we know our roles offensively, or at least we're starting to. And then from there, it's, can you keep every game? Can you stay within that like 8 to 11 range? I think that's a really, really good spot to be with how efficient this offense is.
Mike, we talked, as we zoom out a little bit, we talked in the last podcast about this upcoming stretch of high majors, Arkansas, then a couple in Big Ten play at Northwestern. A week from now, you got Wisconsin for the Big Ten home opener, and then Tennessee. You said the line, do your work early. Well, they did that. Not that the work is done, but a really nice win to notch on your belt in terms of high major, one that you hope looks pretty good on your resume going forward. Arkansas's got a lot of talent. Aside, I don't know what happened to John L. Davis. He's not nearly the same player for them right now. But, yeah, you look at Northwestern here coming up here in about a week. They're 6-2. Or 5-2, I should say. They just lost to Butler. Barnhizer was hurt early. He comes back here recently. They've struggled. They went to overtime with that Eastern Illinois squad. They lost to Dayton. That's not a bad loss. Dayton's a very solid team. But what do you see in terms of the week now for Illinois to work on some things, to have that win under their belt, and then as they approach Northwestern and the start of Big Ten play?
Yeah, get ready for traps. Get ready for post traps. Get ready for them to put 2 on the ball. Like, I think, what's actually good about this year, I mean, last year they killed Northwestern at home. I mean, they beat them by 30 because, they wanted to start trapping Damask and on some of these back downs, and they just, Quincy was great in that game. I mean, they were just able to knock down shots. They were cutting off those traps. And then you go up to Northwestern and it was a little bit like, I thought they took it to you a little bit. I mean, that in overtime, they were just a tougher team, and you couldn't get stops down the stretch with Boo Buie kind of spreading everybody out and going matchup hunting. This time around, like, you're still going to have to deal with pressure. There's still, if you look on KenPom, there's these, if you're in the top 100, right, or top 75, you're in the green. They're a lightish green with how they're turning teams over this year, because they still post trap and because they still will put 2 on the ball, and the way that they rotate out of it, I think has always been super impressive. So you got to be ready for that. You only had 11 turnovers against Arkansas. You can't let this get to 17 the next game, or just continue to build on that. And again, like I said, the teams that have put 2 on the ball for Illinois are the teams that, have not done well against Illinois. So we'll see. Like, I expect them to be favored in this game. We'll see by how much, because it's kind of a funky game where it's like Northwestern's coming off of a loss. Probably should have won the game. Brooks Barnhizer, they go the foul up 3, and he goes into a shooting motion from like half court and hits a shot. That's a whole separate conversation, because I think it should have counted. But they're a team that's going to be, that's not going to be a finished product early on either, because, like you said, Barnhizer's getting reacclimated. Leach is still kind of figuring out who he is. Martinelli's been great early, but he's adjusting to Barnhizer coming back. So you're catching them at a time where I don't think this team hasn't hit their apex by any means, but they're still dangerous, because we know they can knock down shots from the outside on any given night with Barry, with Barnhizer. Leach can shoot it. Martinelli can shoot it. They're a sneaky team. I didn't understand why they were picked 16th preseason. Now you could look now and be like, hey, lost to Butler, lost to Dayton, but they're nowhere near who they're going to be. So this is a game you definitely got to be careful with.
KenPom says right now Northwestern has a couple more games here to play coming up. They have a Big Ten game before this one against the Illini. They play at Iowa before coming home to host the Illini. KenPom says 74-70 is the projected score. Illinois, oh, by the way, is currently projected 6-point favorite over Wisconsin in the Big Ten home opener there. So before we let you go, Mike, I want to get your thoughts. I picked Indiana to win the Big Ten going into this year, which as of this week looks horrible. It's very, very early. We'll see. Illinois, can they build consistency? How does this process go? It's great to have this high point early, and I'm really encouraged by the early signs. Purdue isn't going anywhere. They're not Superman, as they showed, going to Marquette. They're obviously beatable. We all knew that, despite a really impressive win against Alabama. We've seen maybe the high point of Rutgers. They did it in a losing effort, but they went toe-to-toe with Bama. Michigan State, nice win for them at the end of the Maui to beat North Carolina. So there's a lot there to consume, but Indiana was atrocious against Louisville. They got beat very handily by Gonzaga. That's the highest paid roster in the Big Ten. It's got a lot of proven guys in high major basketball, but it is a mess right now in Bloomington. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. There's players on that team that I like. Like they have good players, but it's what's plagued Indiana for the last few years is just that they just have no grit. I mean, seriously. I mean, even watching last year, it's like you let a 7-0 run turn into 16-0. You let what should be like a 6-0 run turn into 13-0, and they just their back breaks so easily. And I don't know what it is. I mean, part of it is like, they showed more emotion yelling at each other in that Louisville game than just the emotion that you're supposed to play with as a tough basketball player. So I know like they went in, substantially financially, with how they put this roster together. And I still think it's just, they haven't figured out the situation with the bigs. I think Renew's a good player. I mean, if you look at his numbers over the past couple of games, they're good, but he can't guard anybody because they're putting him in there at the 4, right? And so, or teams that can spread you out and play 5 out. Like they just got a lot that they need to address, and you can't have Miles Rice being like Jekyll and Hyde every game. He's got to be good for them to be good. It's just that simple. And if Miles Rice isn't going to play at the level he's capable of, like that, they're certainly not going to win the Big Ten. But now once you start moving more and more towards the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, that you have a chance to get swallowed up, because I truly think still like the 4th to the 15th ranked team in the Big Ten, maybe 16th, are going to be separated by like 2.5 games. So that's the difference between being in a bye in the Big Ten tournament and not making the Big Ten tournament. So it's crazy to see, and it's frustrating just as like a basketball viewer. And I get it. Like I went to Illinois, but like it's frustrating to watch a team like Indiana just be so lifeless at times. And we'll see. I mean, that you go into Atlantis and it's like, hey, we have a chance to pick up some quality wins, and there's a chance they leave 0-3.
Unbelievable. Feast week has been tremendous so far. Awesome. Maui was off. Unbelievable, off the chain, as someone might say. My wife would probably say you're too old for that line, but
it plays.
It's been unbelievable. It's the best. You got Battle for Atlantis. You got the Players Tribute there, where Bama and Houston were in action. That was a great game, and Illinois adding to that for their fans. They're on Thanksgiving Day with a 90-77 win. It was great breaking it down with you, Mike. We hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend and look forward to doing this again soon, man.
Likewise, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Jeremy Warner was in person in Kansas City. He's already rolled out some great content. He's got a column on Kasparas, Jakucionis and the closing effort that was down the stretch. He's got a notebook discussing the brothers battle between the Ivisic twins and obviously Tommy getting the best of that one. He also caught up with Coleman Hawkins. I personally haven't read that one yet. Look forward to that. Any Coleman content is interesting content. You know that. And Keaton Wagler, the 2025 signee, who's from the Kansas City area, was there as well. So look forward to reading his stuff, and I'll throw in some moves there as well, some player grades, and really focusing in on Illinois' offense and being what they want to be. So a lot of coverage for you. Oh, by the way, there's a football game, a pretty big one, as Illinois tries to go to 9-3 as they battle Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Jeremy will make his way up there, as well as Joey Wagner. They'll have plenty of coverage. So a lot coming to Illini Inquirer. Check us out. Subscribe to us, rate us, review us. We'll talk to you next time here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.